All right, everybody. I think we're good to go here, and we'll start off again. So, in terms of our solutions here, we've done preparation, planning. We're out there. Now we're going to talk about what we're going to do, on the trip. Right here, actually. I needn't have held that up. But we're going to monitor conditions. We're going to check in. We're going to recognize the terrain. We're going to use it. Can anybody understand the penguin talking? I hope so. So I've got to amuse myself here, as well as you, I hope. I'm an emperor penguin for today. So beacon check. So we want to do a beacon check. We'll run through that when we get out in the field. There's a system we want to have that checks that our beacon is transmitting and it's receiving and that we're in the right mode for out that day. As we go, we're going to go ahead and we're going to monitor the conditions and we're going to keep our eyes out for some of those red flags we talked about. Heavy snow, drifting snow with wind, rapid warming, whoomphing, avalanche activity, cracks, and no slab above a reek layer, which might be reported or it might be observed. Just because we made a decision doesn't mean that we're not going to change our decision as we go. So we're looking for those red flags we talked about. We're going to check in with the group. How is everyone doing? Anybody seen something? Oftentimes, if our group gets spread out, the people in front don't talk to the people behind. People in front take a break. We all know this one. You're behind. As soon as you get up to them, they take off. So we want to be able to exchange information. Gear issues, with high-tech ski bindings, snowboards, and so on, gear issues are pretty common. Things break. Skins ice up. We've got to stop and clean those. So we want to keep on checking in to make sure that we're still on the same page. Now, we talked about recognizing avalanche terrain. Now here we've got terrain and a small avalanche. Where's our route going to take us? How are we going to deal with it? Are there dangerous slopes and terrain traps? So once we've recognized it, we can go ahead and assess the consequences. What's the slope angle? Are there convex rollovers? Is it committing? If it's committing, do we want to commit? And if we don't, what are our options here? We've got to remember that even a small piece of terrain can have serious consequences. So when we choose the terrain, we're thinking not only about the where, but the when and the how we go. We're looking for options and consequence. One way to look at this is that the tracks we set are kind of the sum of all of our choices. This is some tracks that a friend and I made in the Ruby Lake area in Rock Creek, spring corn skiing. We want to ski early in the day, get down before things get too warm. The up track comes in up here, goes around, takes the least steep line, giving protection, gets up onto the top of the dome. Good place to take a break. Whoop, let's back up here. Take a break on top, discuss how we're going to play it. Want to keep an eye on each other. So you come out to the edge, one person skis down, comes over, stops over here somewhere. Second person comes down, comes past, keeps on going. Comes down, pulls out, maybe over here somewhere, out of fall line, stops. Next person down, keeps on going, regroup, and then ski the lower angle terrain together. So when you look at somebody's tracks, you should, to a certain extent, be able to think about what they did and why they did it, and did they make good choices? They'll ask questions about why. Why are people choosing different tracks? Why are they grouped up here? Just because somebody's put a track in doesn't mean that we want to go that way. Did they make a good decision here? No, our human tendency, unfortunately, is in deep snow, if somebody's broken a track, we'll follow it. It's easier. That's not necessarily the best idea. Do these people know more than you? Maybe not. No, why are these people up here with the sun hitting the slope above, grouped up above a steep slope that potentially could take all of them out at once? If there's going to be a wind slab anywhere, it's probably going to be along this area here, there. So look at tracks and evaluate what somebody else did. Don't follow them blindly. Reassess and evaluate. Just discuss what you're seeing. Just because you don't see something doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. This is a place where we can refer back to our trip plan. What did we decide in the morning? Have things changed, or is it just us who have changed? We want to try and develop an eye for terrain and anticipate consequence. When we look at this, where might the avalanche problem be? How can we avoid it? The red places maybe you want to avoid. Our dotted line is our up track. Our gray line is our down track. So those are ways of just looking at terrain and imagining where the problem might be. Let's look at this one here. This is out of Colorado, Crested Butte area. When you look at this, what do you think that a deep slab, persistent slab avalanche in this terrain might look like? Where do you think it's going to avalanche? Take a moment. Just how big might it go? How small? Where might be a place that wouldn't be involved in the avalanche? Now, is it anything like this? It's just south of Crested Butte. This here was remotely triggered by a party that went up here and got on top of the dome and triggered all this remotely. There was some form of a buried layer there. I don't know if they're aware of it or not. So no, their plan was to go up onto the ridge crest here, and that plan changed pretty quickly. So we want to see not only the avalanche or the ski run, we want to see the avalanche path as well. We want to remember what slopes have slid previously. We've got a cornice up here. So is it really any surprise that we've got a wind slab there? No, we're obviously on a lee slope, not a windward, as indicated by that. So slope angle looks to be in our zone. Big surprise? Shouldn't be. We want to recognize when the wind makes changes. And wind is always going to make changes. No, we've got a bit of a cornice here. Wind obviously has been blowing from behind forward. If there's any form of a problem, it's most likely to be over here somewhere. So we can ski the top ridge line there fairly readily, away from danger terrain, as opposed to hucking off the top there and maybe triggering something in there. So using the terrain to our advantage. We're estimating slope angles. Sometimes we can sight to estimate them, but we also have to remember that our sighting is just an average and it doesn't take into account the complexity of the slope angle, of the slope. Here we have a convexity with a concavity and a steeper area in there. We might measure it at 30, but a maximum slope angle there might be 38. And the flat light, that really affects our ability to measure slope angle. I've certainly suddenly found myself in flat light on slopes much steeper than I thought I was on. The flip side, in flat light, sometimes you end up thinking you're moving and you're not because you're on the flat. So we're always discussing and analyzing the terrain. We're thinking about our timing. Now, for us in the Sierra Nevada, 24 hours after a significant snowfall allows the problem to stabilize some. Early morning, is it better to cross the slope then? If I'm doing a long distance ski tour, I want to go ahead and think about where I'm placing camp so I can get up to the top of the pass. I say on a south facing slope, Mother Pass, for example, in the Sierra, get up that early enough when it's just soft enough to travel in, but before it gets too much sun and becomes a wet, loose avalanche problem, or maybe a wet slab. Again, the avalanches don't care. Another Colorado one here. We've got some nice looking tracks set there. These were some people who went ahead, they skied this, they dug a pit, they thought everything was good. And the next day, it looked like this. You can still see the tracks on the top section there. This was remotely triggered by a snowmobiler on these tracks down here. Snowmobile is a bigger trigger than a skier often is. But again, I don't know all the details on this, but this would look like maybe some form of persistent slab issue, maybe a wind slab, but there's probably something here that these people missed, and for whatever reason, they got lucky. Let's say that they skied slightly different lines and they'd gone ahead and hit that weak spot in the snowpack. It mightn't have been as good as a good outcome as it was for them. Our goal here is to avoid putting ourselves in a situation where we get lucky. We can't make a career out of being lucky. We've got to make good assessments. So in terms of using the terrain to reduce our risk, maybe we can use a smaller slope, we can ski one at a time, we can watch each other. Particularly with snowmobiles these days, there's been a number of accidents where somebody got stuck, other snowmobiles have gone to the rescue, snowmobiles are a big load, and they've caused an avalanche that took everybody out. So general rule of thumb is, if somebody's stuck, let them dig themselves out. Now, I'm particularly careful about traveling below other groups. Now, if there's another group, go ahead and stop and wait for them to get out of the way. So these are all tips to use. Again, terrain choice. We can still have fun on a low angle slope. We don't have to go for the steepest. So looking at this photo here, what do you guys think? Where do you think the wind's been blowing from, and where do you think the greatest avalanche potential might be? Type it on in there. Blowing left to right? Yep. Okay. So it's blowing across. We got a little cornice there and so on. So where's our biggest danger? Yeah, right above the skier or right where the skier is. Does this person have any options of where they go? What do you think? On the ridge, sure. Yeah. Maybe you can go up this way and down that way over there. So back the way they came, potentially. Do you really think you want to get out in the middle of the slope, have a whoomp and a crack that we looked at in one of the other images, shoot away from your skis? No, that isn't going to be what you want. At that point, it's just too late. And you have really no choice but to try and go back the way you came. And at that point, you've had failure within the snowpack. Really, the only thing that's saving you is luck. Here we've got an avalanche that's occurred here. We probably have the same conditions over here in this area. What, when we look at this, is the difference, and why might we feel justified in skiing over here, but not over here? What do you think? One of our primary factors. Lower angle, yes. Mike's asking if you're going down, it's safer to back backtrack or ride along the track? Yes, it probably is, all things being equal. But again, you've stepped over the line. You've already gotten yourself into a bad situation, and now you've got to extricate it. You've already started sliding on the ice. Now you've got to try and get the vehicle and yourself out of that situation. And you might not. Where do you think wind direction has been blowing here? Right to left from Elizabeth, yes. So if there's a slab danger, it's probably going to be on these nice looking slopes over here. So people have hedged their bets and they skied the less angle. There's still a little bit of a lee zone there, but it's lower angle. So they felt okay doing that, as opposed to following out the ridge, jumping off there and skiing this slope. They'll ski along this one here. So again, using terrain to modify the hazard. Now we want to discuss what we're going to do should things go wrong. Should be part of our planning there as we go in. Do you really think these guys have discussed their travel strategy before they went in here? You can steal a lot of good photos off the internet. So in terms of travel techniques, we want to try and maintain contact when we can. We're not going to use the word safe zones. We'll use safer, and ones where things are probably going to be a little less exposed to the hazard. Sometimes we'll do it down ski in short pitches. Sometimes we might want to do it in longer. Ease onto a slope. You just go on, maybe don't immediately do a big sweeping turn, just bounce a little bit, get a feel for the snow. Are you feeling anything, any whoomphing, any collapsing? Okay, it's feeling okay, now we'll start to turn. Stacking tracks. And rather than just spreading out massively across a slope, leader will go down, somebody ski just close to him, somebody to there. We all get our nice fresh snow. And if there's a lot of people around, stacking tracks is just sort of a polite thing to do rather than tracking up the entire slope. Spreading out goes ahead and minimizes the number of people who get caught should something go wrong. On the other hand, sometimes staying together in a whiteout type condition is better than spreading out and losing track of people completely. You have to make the call. One is not necessarily right all the time, and the other is not necessarily wrong. One at a time. Reduces the number of people exposed. This is what Caltrans will do. The technique here is just keep moving. No pedestrians. Pedestrians walk slowly. They won't move through the danger zone as fast as they could. So travel techniques we want to apply, but we want to make sure we apply them in the right places. This here is Taylor Mountain out of Jackson Hole in Wyoming. This is a few years ago. Where do you think the wind's been blowing from here, looking at the terrain? Give me your best guesses. Okay, we've got Sergio said right. It's been blowing to the right. We've got our cornices along the ridge there. So if wind blew here, where are we going to expect there to be a slab danger in this photo? Type that in for me. Upper left. It's probably going to be right where the tracks are and where it's broken, right in that area. So this here is the other view of it. Big terrain, above tree line, or high elevation. This is the forecast for that day, where at high elevation in the afternoon and the morning is considerable danger. Remember, I said that most accidents happen during considerable danger zone. But this is a forecast where potential exists for very large, deeper slabs to release and starting zones of major avalanche paths. So going back to this one, these guys went ahead, they used good travel techniques. They went ahead, they skied one at a time, they pulled off to the side into what they thought was safer, or they identified as safer terrain. But really, there's nothing in this whole gully that qualifies as safer terrain. The only place you'd be safer is around the corner on the ridge. So they applied what they thought were good travel techniques in wrong terrain. And given the day, maybe, again, it's easy to second guess, they could potentially have skied this ridge line down over here somewhere, but avoided this big, huge bowl. And as we see, everything up here funnels down into a terrain trap, narrowing there. So one person died in this avalanche. So our terrain tracks don't trump, our travel techniques don't trump terrain choices. We need to make sure that our terrain is appropriate for the conditions and the group. So how about these folks here? Do you think they're traveling wisely? What do you think? Type it in for me. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay, why, Joshua? Nope. Carl says doesn't look like it. Why not? Expand it. Too many people in the avalanche path? Yeah. They're not necessarily traveling together, but they're grouped together. Yes, they're applying good ski of the slope one at a time, but if this guy up here, this person, triggers something, they're all right below it. They're better to have come down and then pulled off somewhere over to these trees out of view. So they're 50% right, but they still missed out on something there. So in our book, we have teamwork that kind of overrides everything. We've touched on it a little bit. We're going to delay debrief for just a moment. So we've planned our trip, our group. We've got the group of people that we like, that we want to go out with. We've gone ahead. We've discussed the group goals, experience. We've got a suitable objective. Again, are the people that you're out there with going to be able to take care of you should things go bad? I mentioned earlier that if you're buried and then found, after 10 minutes or so, your chances are fairly high being found alive. In avalanche victims, people who die, probably about 80%, 75, 80% of people are the result of asphyxiation. 20% or so are the result of trauma from the avalanche. And a beacon is not going to help with trauma. What happens when somebody's buried is that they go ahead, they breathe in air, they exhale warm air. That tends to form a mask around the face of ice as that warm air condenses on the snow. The snow is fairly porous, it allows air in, but ice doesn't. And that's generally what cuts off oxygen to people who are buried. Again, not thinking about trauma. 10 minutes, that probably hasn't happened. After 35 minutes or 30, it's starting to go ahead and form that ice mask, and people are probably going to be not only suffering from lack of oxygen, they're going to be getting hypothermic, similar things like that. So we've kind of got this little window. And as I said, you're not going to get ski patrol there. You're not going to get search and rescue. You want to go ahead and make sure that you know how to do things. What AIARE's developed is what they'll call the rules of engagement here. That everybody's going to stick together. You're going to decide together, going to listen to voice, challenge assumptions and respect vetoes. One thing to learn from here are Canadian heli ski operators, where a lot of the operations, they vary, but a lot of the operations there, you have a morning guides meeting and an afternoon or evening. At the meetings, it's decided what runs are green, as in skiable, and what ones are red, as in closed. Everybody there is expected to give an opinion, and the opinions from everybody, first year guide, 10-year guide, are listened to. To make a green run red takes one person to say, I just don't like this. I'm not happy with it. At that point, it's going to be automatically made red. It's not going to be a big, long, drawn-out argument about, come on, man, it's not that bad. We've had this open 2 days, everybody skied it, nothing's gone wrong. It's basically somebody isn't happy with it. Okay, let's move on. They're lucky that they've got a lot of different runs to choose from there. To make a red run green takes everybody saying, I'm okay with this, let's do it. So that's respecting vetoes. And it means that it's not going to be a long, knockdown, drawn out battle to decide what to do. Everest here last year. It just doesn't look a whole lot of fun to me. But for better or worse, a lot of us who go out into the backcountry are classic type A personalities. We want it our way. We're prepared to bulldoze on through. It's not necessarily a plan for success. People are often pushed to complete a project. It's an irrational drive to reach a goal, as we kind of talked about before. It doesn't have to be Everest. It can be something relatively small that we haven't been able to succeed on before. So we get this goal that we keep on working towards, and we generally just don't want to back down. So Scott Fisher died on Everest. It's kind of a result of that drive to keep on pushing forward and forward. I'd worked alongside Scott up in Denali, up there, so I knew him some. They had a turnaround time for Everest that year, and they didn't stick to it. So if we're going to make a turnaround time, stick to it. The spring, we've decided we want to be skiing down at 10 o'clock to get the good snow. It's 10:30. We should be asking ourselves, why haven't we turned around yet? Why are we keeping going? We're going to probably miss out on the good snow anyway. The bottom's going to drop out of it. It's going to be unpleasant skiing. So have your time and stick to it. One thing we're always dealing with out there is uncertainty. We cannot know everything about the snow, the terrain, the people we're with, everything. There's going to be stuff we don't know. So we have to constantly manage our uncertainty. If we're uncertain about things, what's the consequence going to be if we commit? Can we get more information? Can we maybe then dig a snow pit? Can we go onto different terrain? Can we increase or maintain our margins of safety? So in terms of limiting our avalanche exposure, the more confidence we have, the more we can step it out. We're not just going to jump into things blindly, but we're going to step it out cautiously. The less confidence we have, the more we just want to keep it simple. And go with exposure to low angle, maybe forested terrain. We don't have to go up into the high paths and steep terrain at all. If we've decided this terrain we're not going to go into, how much margin are we going to put between it and us? We always have those unknown unknowns, the stuff that's under the surface, the trigger points we can't see. We might have originally planned to go up and ski the couloir here. We get there and we see there's a big cornice. It's getting a little later in the day. We don't have to go up here at all. We can go ahead and still ski these slopes from here on down, have a good run without doing the last couple of 100 feet. Again, there's times when we'll go up here, there's times we won't. As I've said before, my goal is to go out and have a good time with people in the backcountry and enjoy it. And that's what I'll predicate my success upon. Fun, friends, people I work with, that type of thing. And for me, our teamwork is going ahead and taking care of each other. I've skied with Marty here for decades, and we still go out, have a good time, take care of each other. So that's all part of our teamwork. So our last one here that we want to do is debrief. And we want to look at what happened during the day. We've got debriefing down here. When we did our planning, we predicted what we were going to find. We went out there, we were in the backcountry, we traveled, we observed, got more information, and now we can compare what we found here. What we're trying to do is intentionally build expertise versus haphazardly gaining experience. Now, oftentimes when we go out, our goals, head back to the bar, the restaurant, home, and throw off the gear, grab dinner. That isn't going to help us get better in the backcountry. It's been defined that there's two different types of learning environments, a kind and a wicked learning environment. And an industry standard for expertise is about 10,000 hours. If you're a auto parts salesperson here working at Napa, it's going to take this woman here about 5 years of 9-to-5 work, 260 work days a year to get that 10,000 hours. For a backcountry skier, if you ski every weekend for the whole winter, it's going to take you over 20 years. And some of that skiing is not just avalanche evaluation. So there's not a lot of people who have achieved 10,000 hours of avalanche studies at all. There's a lot of people who have a lot less, despite what they might think. For her here, this is a kind learning environment. You go in there and get your fuel filter for your 1996 Jeep Cherokee. She gives you the 2000. You go home, you try to put it in and it doesn't fit. You take it back, you hand it back to her and said, you made a mistake here. She says, oh, I'm sorry, let me check that. Oh, I'm sorry, I gave you the wrong year. Let me get you the right one. For her, that's a kind learning environment. She realizes the difference between now the 96 and the 2000, and she'll plug that into what she knows, her data bank. So she's getting direct feedback right then. It's you pounding on the counter telling her that she gave you the wrong one. She's getting direct feedback. That's a kind learning environment. The other one is what we'll call a wicked learning environment, where we don't get that direct feedback. And we don't want that direct feedback because it has harsh consequence. So our feedback can often be misleading. Those people who skied Battleship and it went the next day, slid then, they didn't get immediate feedback, nor did they want that. The people last weekend got the immediate feedback. So in a wicked environment, because we don't get that feedback, we have a tendency to take increased risk over time. And debriefing is a way that we can gain feedback without the harsh consequence. It takes being honest. Did we do a good job? So that's what we want to try and do through the debrief process. We've talked about that empathy gap, where our state depends on, or our decisions depend upon our mental state. Debriefing is a way to maybe diffuse that, where we've taken a moment back. It's no longer the great run in knee-deep powder. We're taking back, we're now back at home, we're at the restaurant waiting for dinner, whatever. Then we've got the opportunity to say, did we let our emotions really override us that day? And should we not have done that? So hopefully it's a way to help accurately predict our future thoughts and behaviors. So we're looking at, were the conditions what we anticipated? Did what we decided in the morning play out? Did we make good decisions? How can we improve it? The weather. How did it affect it? Did it get warmer? Did it get colder? What changed? How did that affect the avalanche danger? We'll compare what our primary concern was in the morning. Did we see evidence of it? If not, well, why not? Were we just in the wrong place? Did we just not get to find what that problem could have been? Just because we didn't find it doesn't mean that it didn't exist. If we're going skiing tomorrow, No, is the danger increasing or decreasing? What's the trend? What were the strengths of our plan? Where were we exposed? And importantly, were we good and did a good job, or were we just lucky? Those folks that slid the next day in Colorado, they got lucky. And we can't make a lifetime career out of being lucky. So those are all questions. So when I'm guiding or when I'm working with guides who work for me, whenever we come back from a trip, I want to answer or ask and answer these questions. It's not just a matter of throwing the pack down, and taking a nap. We want to find time to discuss what we would change next time around. Again, we're trying to avoid that harsh feedback there. We can look at accident reports, and those are a useful way to kind of look and see what we might do in a similar situation. However, we've got to keep aware or be aware that we don't want to fall into the trap of saying, my God, those people were idiots. What were they thinking? Fools, I would never have done that. If we're honest with ourselves, we might well say, I could have done the same thing. Now, this is what we call a blind spot bias. So if we're going to look at accident reports, we want to be honest about it. The advantage here is if we're honest, we can look and see what mistakes people made, and then maybe file that away in our memory bank so that at some point in the future, we might recognize a situation and be able to apply what we learned just through reading to that situation. Just think, this reminds me of, and it doesn't have to be from our personal experience because we don't want that harsh feedback. Another way to do it is, before we ski a slope, just think about how the accident report might look afterwards. Would your decision stand up to scrutiny? Would people be able to say, yeah, I might have made similar decisions in that situation? Were there things that we could have missed? So another approach there. And there's a quote from Will Durant, who with his wife, Ariel Durant, went ahead and wrote a history of the civilization. Education is a progressive discovery of our own ignorance. Whenever you go out into the mountains, you should learn something new. It mightn't be what you wanted to learn. It might be something totally different, but you should still learn something. We want to be open to that learning, incorporating it into our memory banks, but at some point we might well want to draw upon it. So that's pretty much of our presentations here. We've run through a lot of stuff. As I've said, this is a practical skill here. We can't learn it just from the presentations here. You've got to get out and put it into use. So that's going to be the next phase for folks, is to put this into use. And that's where the field days will come in. Just in closing here, I'll put these in a follow-up email as well, just some links and other things that you might like to look at. And as I said, jot these down, look at them, or I'll send them out later. This is the book that I mentioned that Kahneman defined not only heuristics, but also our system 1, system 2. Another one here that I've just been recently reading, came out this year, Why We Prepare for Disasters. And this has a lot of topical things in it right now. So those are some background reading on how we screw up things. If you want to delve more into the avalanche side of things, Bruce Tremper's book here, Staying Alive in Avalanche Terrain, I think there's a 3rd edition of this now, is a good book to expand what we've talked about here today. So I'd look for that one. If your interest is more in the scientific side of things, Then there's the Avalanche Handbook, which goes deeper into that side there. And we'll use this as more of a textbook for the level 2 courses. If those are looking a little weighty to you, these ones here are small books that you can carry in the pack if you want to. They're pretty small. Jill Fredstone, Doug Fessler worked a lot up in Alaska and Panhandle there, Haines, those sort of areas, with avalanche forecasting. Ed LaChapelle, ABC of avalanche safety. LaChapelle was another one of the greats of avalanche education and evaluation, mitigation with ski areas. And that's an older book now, but it still has a lot of valuable information in it and just another way to look at things. Getting away from the sort of more textbook side of things, Jill Fredstone from Alaska also wrote a book on her experiences with avalanches, primarily up in Alaska. And that's a good book to look right there as well. So route finding. We haven't done a lot of it here, but this is a good one just to go ahead. It's basically a mountain scene. You have to find your way from one place to another. And that's worth looking at there. Human factors, this is sort of an overview of them. And it'll certainly expand what we've talked on as well. Some people might have seen this already. This, oh, actually, no, not this one, sorry. Real quick one, looking at our biases and how we make mistakes. If you want to, just put in, you can do it right now. Put in New York Times, test your problem solving. And it should take you to this page. And it's a 30-second quiz, if that. Try that one. See if you get it right. Just looks at our biases. Some people might have read this one already. There was an accident a couple of years ago in Washington at Tunnel Creek. This was one of the first uses of an airbag for real that helped a woman survive. There was a lot of human mistakes made in this accident, and it's worth reading it just to look at those mistakes. They don't do a lot of analysis of it. That's up in your court. Canadian one here, Cherry Bowl. Another good case study. Again, read these being honest. There. And last one, get this one. Video, it's available on YouTube. It came out a few years ago. There's a lot of different videos out there as regards avalanche education. I think this is probably the best of them. There's a number with sort of the pounding ski music soundtrack, people skiing down giant slopes in Alaska, that sort of thing. This one here is older now, but is still highly relevant. One person died in this accident, and they were doing a doctorate in snow science, looking at processes that create surface haul. They knew everything they needed to know to avoid the accident. However, it's also a case study in how things just go bad and keep on getting worse. So I've watched this a number of times for courses and so on. It still has an impact. Even grown men should have a box of tissues alongside. So again, it's, I think, a realistic look of how things can go bad fairly quickly and continue to get worse. So that there is the end of that slideshow. And just some resources, as I said, I'll go ahead and I'll put these in an email to people at a later point here. So that wraps up pretty much all of what we've got. Actually, let me just see here. People want to watch a video?
Sure.
Let me see if I can find it. That's my ongoing, that'll be my problem here. People got that?
Yep.
Good?
What's that? We got a little film crew.
Hey.
You got it there?
Hey.
Okay, great. Yep, what's happening? All right. A lot of snow machines at Hatcher Pass. decent snow. Nice day.
Yeah.
First skier here. Skiing pretty good.
You can hear the snowmobile.
Turning well.
Next.
Another good skier. Slope angle. You'd probably say it's in our 30 to 45 degree. Skier number 3, dog number 1. Skier number 4. What do you think about where they've stopped? What's that mound that they're kind of standing on there?
Oh, geez.
Skier number 5, dog number 2. Hits the rock.
Oh.
Definitely an O. Okay. We talked about trigger points. Whoop, I was trying to stop that. We've got a rock right here, and that's where it kind of broke. So, people jumping off there are probably pretty lucky they didn't actually hit the rock. It's not that well covered. Remember, around the rock, we can get weak points, and 4 skiers missed the weak point. The 5th somehow hit it. Okay. People are suddenly deciding that they might well be in the run-out. So, were they traveling wisely there?
Can you see him?
I did not see it.
You might want to start getting a move on that.
I am on my way. I got my people.
You see him?
Black right there.
The dog. You see him? There's the dog. Where the fuck's Jerry?
So after that, it's primary cleanup. That guy was lucky. He broke a leg there. So again, we can look at some of these accident reports. There's more background to this. They're a very experienced group of people. They skied a lot. They'd skied this area before. One of them has skied out of avalanches previously without a problem. When the forecast for this day was considerable, and they dug a snow pit on the way up. They did some tests. They got results that they didn't like, but they still kept on going. So I said there's a lot of backstory to it, but a couple of the take-home points I think are that it's not always that first person who triggers an avalanche. There can be those weak spots in the snowpack that we don't know are there, but they exist. They did it right by skiing one at a time. They certainly did it wrong by stopping all in the run-out zone there. Again, considerable day is when most accidents happen. They got 2 feet of snow overnight with wind. So when we look at some of these avalanche accidents, it's not necessarily oh my God, I never would have expected that. Sometimes it's more of, that's kind of what I thought could have happened. So in this one, maybe they didn't have to ski that slope on that particular day. Maybe they would have been better to do it a day later. A lot of different things going on there. So, it's just what we want to do is apply a good methodology to our decision making and go through a process. So that pretty much wraps it up here for me, I think, folks. Does anybody have any questions or anything like that?